Good morning, everyone. Welcome and thank you for being part of WorkSafe's first webinar for 2021 Health and Safety Month. Hello, my name is Rob Kelly. I'm the Director of Special Services at WorkSafe, and I'll be your host for this session today, Why WorkSafe Exists. Now, while our sessions are virtual this year again, our aim for Health and Safety Month remains the same, to keep you up to date. And this year's overall theme is you learn something new every day. And we've structured this session as a conversation between myself and our two special guests that I think will move and inspire us. So let's begin. You're about to meet two people who represent the very powerful and personal reasons why WorkSafe exists. And there are two simple reasons: to reduce workplace harm and to improve the outcomes of workers who are injured. We want to ensure that all Victorian workplaces are safe environments and that workers can go home to their loved ones each and every day safe and well. And where workers are injured in the course of their duty, it's our job to ensure that they can receive the personalised care and support they need for their recovery, their claims, and the return to work, health and safety. So to introduce them to you, I'd like to share two videos with you where Joanne and Dan will tell their stories. Now, by the way, they are also recipients of the Return to Work Awards in previous years. So I'd like to let them tell their story about how their lives were upended.
My name's Jo Woodward. I work at Bensdale Regional Health Service and I'm a nurse. Nursing's very physical, very demanding. I'd just go all night. When I hurt my back, it was in 2015. Then I'd gone and seen a doctor and they had diagnosed me with 3 lower prolapsed discs.
The injury itself is one of those pretty insidious injuries in that it's known as nurse's back. I remember her telling me about her son finding her on the floor and that she couldn't move. And I just thought, as a mother, how absolutely devastating that would be.
The doctor said I was never capable of any work, that they couldn't return me to work in any capacity. So I thought, what would I do? You know, physically I couldn't do much. What would I do?
You know, when nurses have got a back injury, they just feel like they lose hope, definitely lose hope about returning to work and to the practice that they love. And we did talk about, you know, there's so many options in nursing, and to be reassured that we would support her in whatever area she was capable of working in once she'd finished her rehab.
And I remember them saying to me, we're going to use you for your brains and not your muscles. I now am in community health. I have a permanent role doing continence advisory nursing. I love it. I really enjoy everything I do now. And I know at the end of the day, it's different and it's not how I used to be, but I'm not how I used to be either.
I was working at a grain storage facility out in the middle of nowhere in Victoria. We were folding grain tarps and a driver who was driving a skid steer, he opened the bucket and crushed my right foot. I lost the whole top of my foot and I lost some toes and had to have it rebuilt. Thought I was just going to bound out of hospital a week later and be fine, but 30 surgeries and then the recovery period. So 7 years later, still trying to recover from a workplace accident. There was a bit of a kick in the guts really, like being a very active person sport-wise and at work, to find out that the role wasn't there anymore for me and things like that. It was like, well, what do we do now? But I had fantastic support. Return to work, bit of normality in life, just trying to get back and playing with the kids again. So I was a fairly active dad, always walking with them or riding bikes or playing sport in the community, and that all just stopped. If one thing I can do is share my story and try and prevent the next accident from happening, well, I've done what I wanted to do out of this accident. Because I don't want to see anyone else go through what we went through.
Welcome, Joanne Woodford and Dan Casey, our WorkSafe Health and Safety Month ambassadors for 2021. Hi, Joanne.
Hi. Thanks, Rob.
Hi, Dan. Good to have you here.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thanks for being with us today. It's hard to watch those videos and not see your shock and loss, but also admire your roadster recovery and return to work. And I suppose that's what we're here about today, is to talk about return to work. So, Joanne, I'm actually going to start with you. There was two things you said in the video that really struck a chord with me. And the first one was where you said, "What will I do now?" And then you went on to say, "I'm not how I used to be." So really, you came across as determined then and had a goal in mind. Can you tell us the process you went through to make something positive out of the situation you had, to start from that, "What will I do now?" to returning to work?
I suppose at the time, I'd recently been told, well, prior to that, I'd been told that I wouldn't be able to return to work in the current position I'd done. I was a surgical nurse. When I've really lost for words. It was a horrible time of my life. I've always identified with my role as a nurse at work and out of work. So to be told that I would never return to it was heartbreaking. I had some really low moments, but then I suppose I need to fight for this. I just come up with the conclusion that I need to relook at things, get a better attitude, start doing all the things even though they're hard, and fight for my job, which is a part of me and a part of my happiness. And that led to me starting lots of therapy, getting some psychological help, and pushing forward and moving forward with my back injury, which again, when I said it's changed me as in going through something so emotionally traumatic changes you as a person. I feel it's made me more resilient. It's made me learn to ask for help, which was a really difficult thing to do prior to all of that. But in the physical component, I literally can't do things the way I used to. So for me, growing up on a farm, I suppose an example would be, I've always had a veggie garden. So my veg garden was this big patch straight in onto a farm. I now have all raised garden beds that I have all my veggies in. And I can do that with my back. It's not as big. It's not as wild as it used to be, I suppose. But everything I do now is keeping in mind that I do have an injury. It can be exacerbated. But now I have the knowledge now to know that I can get through it and it will get better. I think that's a hard thing at the time to really see at the thick of it. And that's what, in those comments, I suppose that's what I was portraying. It feels like it's not going to end. But if you can just convince yourself, do these things, get all the help you can, move forward, they do end and it does get better and you learn to live a bit differently.
So when you say, change your attitude and fighting for it or looking to the future, one of the things that came across quite strongly was, when you were off work, you never lost sight of one day returning to nursing, and albeit in a different way. And you completed postgraduate studies in stomal therapy and continence nursing while lying flat on your back for a year in your mum's home with your son. And to me, that came across as you were determined to prove that you still had a value in your profession that you so love. You can hear it. You really want to stay in what you're doing. The question I have, and you talk a little bit about there, and I suppose I'll mention the mental health aspects. How did you manage all of that?
Great difficulty. So originally when I started, I'd done one class in my stomal therapy, which was funded from the hospital. I was in surgical. Then my back went, I was off, couldn't move, and still had this course behind me. The hospital had paid for my scholarship, and I suppose I just thought, I have to do this for them. I've got to prove to them how much I want this. They've gone and paid for it, having faith in me beforehand. I need to do the right thing too. I must admit, my grades weren't as great as I was hoped. It was an ideal situation to get remarkable grades, but I did pass. And that gave them, I suppose, when it was time for me to go back to work, that gave them an option of where I could go. So at that point, we had a lot of people about to retire in this industry. So in that particular area of continence. So I was sort of flagged towards those areas without them really saying it, sort of slowly integrating me back to work, I suppose, seeing how I was going. And the fact that I had continued my study in this, like when you sort of said about me laying on my back doing my study, I actually literally lie down at times. Like I couldn't sit up to do it. So I was on the computer, had it on my lap, did it. But yeah, it was part of something I could control. There wasn't much, you can't control an injury, but I can control parts of it. And I felt that that was one thing I could control at a time where there really wasn't much I could control.
Thank you.
So getting through that just gave me that I can do this.
Thank you. Dan, I'm actually going to turn to you. When Joanne was telling her story there, you got the sense of those around her as well. It was something you'd also said in your video that stood out. It was a particular word. And what you said was, what do we do now? And a little bit later on, you also said about we don't want anybody else going through that. It's the way I want to talk about. Can you tell us about, I suppose, the hidden impacts or the ripple effects your injury causes for the people around you?
Yeah, so at the point of the accident, we had 2 young kids. My wife, Joanne, she was doing her PhD and had her own private practice. So to have a workplace accident at that point of time, it's just not about you. It's about my wife and 2 kids and plus extended family and friends. And yeah, how are we going to get on with this? How are we going to get through this? And obviously now it's 7, 8 years after the accident and we're still dealing with it. And I think a lot of the time we forget about the other people in our lives just because we've had the accident that affects so many other people in many ways. So
just a little bit more in that space. You mentioned about your wife, private practice and the impact it had, and even the kids. What does that look like?
So my wife had to stop her practice, so to care for me. I was, I think, 7 weeks in hospital after the first bit of the accident, and yeah, then I was in a wheelchair and had dressing changes and rehab and things to do. Plus, having Isla was 5 at that point. She was just started grade prep, and Nora, she was 3. So. It's funny that, yeah, as I said, it's 8 years on and the kids actually still affected by it. Like it's, if you go away through work for a couple of nights, it's, the question is, when are you coming home? I don't want you to go back in hospital, things like that. It's amazing what kids pick up. So not just my life changed. Yeah, my whole family, the people who were involved in the accident, their whole lives changed just because of that accident. So.
And sticking with that aspect of change, that, you know, before your incident, you had a very physical life. You were involved and played footy and coached local footy and played cricket, kept fit. And in 2013, you walked the Kokoda track, so a very physical life. Physical injuries aren't necessarily always just physical. Can you tell us how your injury impacted your mental health or how you saw yourself?
Yeah, so yeah, as I said, I was pretty heavily involved with sport in our local community. Colac's based around sport pretty much. So to go from playing footy, cricket, basketball, being really fit, and was lucky enough to do the Kokoda trek and planning another trek to do the later part of 2014, to then it all coming to a roaring halt. I suppose one story I had when I come out of surgery, my legs are like, my friends would call it a patchwork quilt, where they've rebuilt my foot and they've taken bits and pieces from my legs. And being a pretty fit kind of guy going to the pool and having a bit of respect how I looked with my top off and in shorts to go to the pool, and then having a foot that was pretty much best word to be mangled, and then having scars and skin grafts and that showing, and people looking at you, it's pretty it really affects you, and it puts you, I didn't want to go back to the pool ever again, and my physio tried to keep egging me on, but I refused to go. And still to this day, it's like if I have my shoe off around and my kids' friends, like when I'm down the beach or something, all the kids just stare at it. So we try and make a joke of it that there's a shark attack or something like that, just to make it a bit of a story, to make them feel a bit more comfortable around it. But yeah, it is really, like, people don't think about the after effects of having a physical workplace. Actually, then it affects you mentally as well. So,
thank you. And I suppose one of the things you both mentioned is about the support and the absolute importance of support in your recovery. And Joanne, I'm going to turn to you now, because it's one of the things you said in the video, as well as the importance of support and communication from your employer during the hard times. And that really stood out actually when Danielle and Bernadette spoke. And they spoke so well about, supporting and bringing you back. How important was that to you, and what did it look like for you, that level of support and communication?
It was a huge turning point for me, having their support. Danielle was wonderful after the original accident, helping me find my way and navigate my way through all the complexities of it, and just providing me with support I needed at the time. So I originally had my first surgery, then another surgery 3 weeks apart, and then a second surgery 3 weeks later. Then my back re-prolapsed again in this 6-month period, and I ended up just laid out. By this stage, I was pretty convinced that I was never going to get my job back. I thought, well, no one's going to want a nurse with a busted up back, 2-3 surgeries in a 6-month period, 3 prolapses in a 6-month period. Like, it just wasn't going good, all these surgeries failing. So Danielle was keeping everyone at work about how things were going. Mentally, I wasn't very well. I was pretty run down, pretty emotional. Didn't know what I was going to do for the future if this all, it didn't look good. I just couldn't see it any other way. I just thought it was all gone. And Danielle must have passed this on to our director of nursing, Bernadette, who I really didn't know, hadn't met before. Out of the blue one day, I got this call from Bernadette, our director at the hospital, who I really hadn't met that much. And she turns around and goes, look, we've had people who've had fusions, because at this point I was talking about fusing my whole lower back. We've had people do this and come back to nursing. We'll have a position open for you even if you go and have this fusion, because at this time we're talking about another surgery, which didn't eventuate because I thought I'd go into a failed back syndrome because I'd had so many surgeries. But she goes, yeah, we'll have a role for you, and we've had people here with it. And that was a huge turning point for me, because once again, that was after I just moved back in with Mum. It was a pretty bad time. 3rd prolapse, I would just couldn't see an end to it all. And again, that just gave me a boost at a really needed time to think I can do this. And that's when I started getting stuck into water aerobics, gym. I just took it all on then, and I just thought, I'm going to do this. So you sort of go up and down throughout these experiences. So originally I had completed the education, but then because it was so drawn out, there was a gap where I sort of hit the wall again. And that was, I think, the motivation for me to think I can do this, and I can really find, I might be able to get back to my job. Like, I might not. I'm from a small rural town. There's not like heaps of variety in nursing jobs here. There's one hospital. I didn't have multiple choices. If they didn't take me back, couldn't see what was going to happen. It was over.
I think that really came out with Bernadette and Danielle talking their way through that. And as you're explaining there, the up and the down and the support that was around you. And Dan, I'm going to lead in with you. Is like Joanne, you weren't alone during your recovery. You had your family, your friends, your community, work colleagues, but also WorkSafe, the agents, and your treating practitioners, who all can have a key role or an important role in supporting your recovery. How important for you was that support and communication, and how did it look for you?
Yeah, look, support was huge for us. I only my parents and Siobhan's dad live in town here. So after a certain point, I think anyone that goes through a hard time in their life, like there's a 6-8 week period where everyone's around you, and then they've got to move on with their life. So that's the hardest bit, is the next part. So having support, it's massive. And as I said before, my wife gave up everything to care for me. When WorkSafe and CGU and NaviNet, they touched base probably about 8 weeks after the accident, and they were like really good. They were just like, take your time. And I'm like, well, no, my wife's kind of given up a fair bit. I need to move forward with what I can and can't do. So they were really supportive. The physiotherapy and rehab centres was when we were living in town, was just across the road. So I was able to get in there in a wheelchair and get my strength back up, and WorkSafe worked really hard with me to work with me. I was there every day for about 3 months. And then NaviNet, Nicole Hollingsworth was like, well, when do you want to go back to work? And I'm like, let's do it. Let's try and some way. And my employer set up a bit of a strategy that I could go the first week for maybe a couple of hours a week and just see how I go. And then we tried a little bit longer, and then had a bit of a setback with my foot, ended up back in hospital for another month, and I kept going back and forward. And look, I've got nothing to praise for the providers around us. When I asked for something and they suggested, they bent over backwards for me. There was never, why do you want that? It's, yep, let's work with it and let's get the right treatment for you. And I can't speak highly enough. So
the sense I get there is, it has been a journey. And as you said, it's 8 years, I think 30 operations you mentioned yourself, and a lot of impacts, that ripple effect of those around you. But how's life now for you?
A lot of people ask me how I go after 30 surgeries. One benefit, I haven't had the flu for about 8 years. I think all the anaesthetics done well with that. But look, I still do rehab. My employer now, they're really supportive. I'm still doing 3 times a week rehab, so I'm a little bit late to work some days, and I've got appointments here, there, and everywhere. So it's life now is good. We've got after 2 days after the accident, my wife found out we were pregnant with our 3rd child. So now we've got 3 beautiful kids. They're all at school now, and it's just lost a little bit. Not as physical, I suppose, where I'd still be liking to play footy and cricket. But after the accident, I had a bit of a deal with the surgeons. Their deal was to try and get back and play 1 game of football. I was able to do that back in 2017. Had to cut my footy boot off because my foot swelled up, but at least we ticked that box. 8 years on, still doing 3 days rehab, still cold weather where we live in Colac. It's not really the most warm place in the world. So you're always waiting for summer to come around, and summer is just a big part of, getting on with life. Life's good. You still got in the back of your mind, I deal with this every day, getting up in the morning, seeing, my foot and my legs, and there's some days the reminder, because I'm still working with machinery, the reminder of that accident, it still grabs you every now and again. But as I said, life, I've got to get on with life because I've got 3 beautiful kids and a wife that needs me to keep positive and keep moving. So
Thank you. And Joanne, I'm going to turn to you and ask you pretty much the same questions. How's life going for you now?
No, life is going really good now. I work part-time, still at Bensdale Regional Health Service. I, again, like Dan, it's now constantly managing my back injury. I must admit I'm probably fitter now than what I was before the accident, because I've got a regular gym program, except for during lockdown, which has been a bit difficult. So I've done a lot of walking and a lot of other types of exercise. It's a really important part of keeping the strength for me and protecting it from further injury. It does I have had exacerbations and times where things really flare up. I've had a time where it did look like there was going to possibly be another surgery. So it's not ideal all the time, but I know what to do, how to do it. And I think the best thing of all is I actually know I can do it. I know it does end. I know it's going to come and go bad, but I know that I have the skills and I have the tools to do it, which at one point I would never have believed it. But yeah, so yeah, really good.
It's a good lead in some ways. Dan, one of the things you said in the video was you still have a way to go with your recovery. And that's one of the things I heard from both of you is working through, it just hasn't ended, it will continue, and you're working with those around you to support you to recover. What have you learned along the way to this point?
Well, yeah, I suppose I'm 38 years old and having like them hard conversations with surgeons and the physiotherapists, and that is enjoy life now, because when I get older, obviously, I'm probably about 25 kilos heavier than what I was when I was playing footy. So it's about managing that, and that's probably a ripple effect of I can't run as good as what I used to and things like that. So it's trying to stay as fit as you can. But yeah, the COVID side of things, food, getting I like food too much. So, but look, yeah, I just. It's a bit daunting knowing, I've got to go back and see surgeons each year, and who knows what they come up with a plan of, because you're going to have arthritis in my foot and things like that. So that it's just that ongoing nervousness of what's going to happen around the corner. So it's just about enjoying life now. And yeah, I think that's a big thing of recovery is just try and enjoy life and keep yourself fit and healthy, and try not to worry about what's around the corner at this point in time. So
just explore a little bit more there where you said that it's daunting at times, but you're recovering and you're seeing improvement, but you're not sure and you're nervous. How do you manage your way through that?
My wife, I put a lot of load on my wife. So we have a lot of discussions around, how we're going to. So winter, obviously, with arthritis in my foot, like it is tough. Like it's tough to move around and things like that. First up in the morning, at the end of the day. So my physio is really good. He's like really good massage, trying to keep warmth in it. So it's just I'm lucky. I've got someone that I can unload on, and I'm hopeful I'm the same for her. But look, at the end of the day, I lost a lot of friends because I wasn't able to be there. Like at that point in time, I was in hospital and trying to do what I was doing, and we've got a small group of friends, and I've still got the friends that I had back then, but not as close as what we used to be. But I've got a good base of friends and family that I can actually talk to, and they're really supportive as well. And I've always got a phone number in my phone that I can reach out if I'm having a tough week or a tough day. And she's been really good too. She helped me through a bit of a dark time too when I reached out through WorkSafe, and so there is them times, and I'm not going to paint a picture that after 8 years everything's roses, but it's just the way you manage it. So
thank you. And Joanne, similar kind of question. What have you learned about yourself, your resilience, your relationships, or even your attitude to work during that time?
I've learned that I'm a lot stronger than what I thought I was. I've learned that when something bad happens, it can take a long time. You can move forward, but with all of this, with all the things that do happen to us, I suppose we grow and change from it. I believe that I'm a better person I'm a more empathetic person. Again, like Dan says, you look at relationships differently. There's a lot of loss through this, but there's a lot of growth too. The friendships and the people you have involved, they become, at the time, who see you in this state, they become so important. Like they become hugely important, and they go to that next level of friendship. So you do lose a few of the stragglers, but you gain so much at the time from it. you do have the strength to do it. You do have the resilience to do it. And moving forward, things aren't like how they used to be, as I said on the video, but you can still do all the things you used to, but you've just got to do it in a different way. Keeping in mind that things do change and you do move forward, and yeah, it does end. And I'm in a place now where obviously I'm not grateful that I've had an injury, but I've gained a lot from having an injury, a new area of nursing that I would never have experienced, new sides to my friendships I would never have experienced, a new insight to my own strength that I would never have known I would have had. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you both, Joanne and Dan, for sharing what are very powerful and personal stories. Very much appreciated. What we're going to do now is we're actually going to go to questions. So if you're ready to go, I'll start asking you some questions. Well, first off, I think, Dan, I'm going to put this one to you. Again, this is about the ripple effect and the kind of unseen impacts at times. Is how did the accident affect your work colleagues? It must have been traumatic for them as well.
Yeah, so there was 5 guys on site when the accident happened, and 4 of them I played footy with at the time, and we were travelling together. And I think after the accident, I can't really remember much after the accident, but I remember after coming out of surgery, all 4 of them were in the hospital room after the surgery, and that was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I still catch up with 1 or 2 of them just briefly for a quick chat, and like the guy who was driving, that really affected him, because obviously he seen the pain that I was in, and obviously the effect it was having on my family as well. So it really affected him as well. And I think sometimes we forget about the people who are actually around and what they've seen. So it was important for me to keep in touch, and him keep in touch with me, and just know that everything's all right and there's no blame or anything. It was an accident, and I wish it never happened. But as Joanne said, you grow from these things, and I'm here trying to promote that I don't want it to happen to anyone I know and anyone else around Australia. The workplace accidents are easy, that happens, and yeah, it has a bad ripple effect on you and the people around you. So.
Thank you. And this question's from Laura, so it's a bit of a long one, so stick with it. How was both your experiences with regards to return to work process and your employer? And if there was one thing you would recommend to other return to work coordinators that could assist other injured workers going through this process, what would it be? So Dan, I'll actually ask you the first part. How was your experience regarding your return to work process with your employer?
Look, they were really supportive. If you've got a really good relationship with your employer, I find that really easy. The support's there. It's if you want to hide away from it and not return calls and emails, it's easy to get not the help, but I think it's important for your mental health. And a lot of people sometimes can't go back to work from a workplace accident. But I think in somewhat, if your employer is supportive of just changing your role or getting you back in some form, it's really important. And I found it easy. I had NaviNet, who are very return to work specialists. They were just like, right, let's program something up to get you back to work. And my employer, they just worked with them, and I was able to go back, as I said previously, like 2 hours a week, and don't have too huge goals. Just take it easy and get. I suppose I talk in football terms. It's getting the match fitness back up, and there is support, and the WorkSafe and NaviNet and CGU, who are my providers, they were just fantastic to deal with. It was just a phone call and asked how I can do things. So
Thank you. And Joanne, the second part of the question was, if there was one thing you'd recommend to return to work coordinator to help an injured person, what would it be?
I was really lucky because I had really good support, and I think been able to find another role for me and something else, so I couldn't return to my current role, was she knew my story. She listened to my story. She knew what I'd gone through. And because she had all that information, she was able to find areas for me that would suit me, my personality, my injury. So it made it so much less stressful on everyone, I suppose, because she knew where I would fit in. She knew what I could do. So I wasn't being put into areas that were totally just out of my capacity. She always discussed with me. You know, the discussion was always had on where I'd like to go and where I'd like to see myself. And I think that that's really important.
So does that go
They
towards
need
what
to
we
be
said?
honest with you as well. Oh, sorry, just saying, and they need to be honest with you what they're able to offer. So where is it realistically, are they able to put you with your skills and skill sets? What can you do for yourself to help yourself to get into a different area if you don't have the skill sets? Like, you know, that honest, work together.
So in some ways, it goes back to what we said earlier on about the support, communication, and just adding that piece there, being honest and clear about what's achievable.
Yep.
Thank you. Next question up is, have processes changed at work following your accident? So Jo, I'll continue with you on that one.
I don't think that, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure we've still got the same sort of processes because our processes have worked. I know there is continual trying to improvement on awareness, more of a global awareness, especially through hospitals, and the acceptance of injury, work cover, the whole stigma that goes behind it all. So I know that that is something that is more spoken about now, and more, I think when we speak about work cover and injuries, it tends to be something that people don't, you know, we sort of hide it. We don't talk about them. Can't openly talk about it. It's not that we all sit there and discuss it, but it's something that's very non-spoken. So I think there's been a lot of, more recently, a lot of discussion about the acceptance and the return into work, and the working with your managers, more and more contact from the actual managers in the different wards, especially in the hospital, because we have a lot of injuries, and all different areas, all the different managers, that them have a bit more direct contact to with their workers to give them that support and hope.
And actually, there's a question here specifically for you. It says, Dan, I was present for your initial return to work planning meeting at work. I've always been curious about how you felt in those initial discussions. That's from a Nicole.
Yeah. The first, I suppose, I didn't even, when after I had my accident, I'm like, wow, like, I don't think I can go back to work. As I said, like having the meetings with Navinet to start with, and then they got all the info and helped me realise that, I probably, like, I can do, like, I thought I've got to go back to work full time. And that was the stress of it, going, wow, I can't literally go to work in a wheelchair. And it was the work from them guys Nicole, that, like, righto, we can get you to work at 2 hours a week. And them 2 hours were like for recovery side of things was just amazing. I don't think I really did much in them 2 hours, but it was just being at work and around my work colleagues again, and then it built up again and again, and I was able to go back full time, and after having so many surgeries and still doing physio, the first part of it was really daunting, because it was like, wow, like when I first got the first letter, it was like, return to work specialists are coming back. Wow, I've got to go back to work after having such a bad accident. But it was actually having the conversation and saying, we actually don't want you to go back to work full time. It was, how are we going to get you back to work, and what does that look like? And as I said, I'm full of praise of Nicole and the team at Navinet. It was a process that really took my mind off the accident and got me moving forward. So,
thank you, and thanks, Nicole, for the question. And Next one, I think, is more of a statement, but I want to share it with you. This is from Jules Weir. Thanks for sharing your story, Joe. I admire your strength in sharing your story with all of us. It's truly inspirational. And Dan, it's another impact type of statement here as well. As I remember hearing about your accident from my husband, who was a sales rep who often visited your workplace. So amazing to hear more about your story and recovery, a true legend. So I think it's important for you guys to get that feedback as well for sharing your stories today. Next question up is, Dan, for yourself. What has your employer implemented related to the task you or your co-workers were doing at the time of the injury?
So I'm no longer with the employer that I was with when I had the accident, but I know from moving forward that there's a lot changed. Heaps have changed. I'm, instead of working what I was doing previously when the accident happened, on supplying, I suppose, equipment to the guys that are doing the job at the moment. I know a lot's changed and a lot of safety procedures have changed from doing that role. And at the time, do we have much training in doing what we're doing? Probably not. And I know now that the guys that are on the ground now have got so much training in doing that role. That it would have probably prevented my accident for sure, definitely. But in the role that I am now, and just being out on farms and stuff, there's still a long way to go, but I still think WorkSafe are doing a fantastic job by giving the information so people are really careful out on farm and on site on these cranes facilities and things like that. So
thank you. And this one I was going to ask you both a final question that I had, but I think this one kind of goes towards it. It's from Karen. It says, what key learnings have you both taken away from the return to work process that you could share with us? So Joanne, I'll start with you.
I suppose I'm just revisiting the things I've said. When returning to work, take the opportunities you get given, work with your employer, be realistic in the goals you set for yourself. They're not necessarily the ones. Be honest and be kind, and look at what your capabilities are both emotionally and physically, and ask for help. And when help is offered, accept help. Yeah.
And Dan, yourself? Final words?
As Joe hit it on the head. Life's going to change, and especially for both of us, we can't go back to the role that we were previously doing. But if you work with your employer, and they find a role for you and ask for help. Don't think that you're on your own. There's always someone there to help you, and there's services. We're lucky in Australia that we've got these fantastic services that will help us. So, there's always help there. If the role's not suited for you, there's always another role that the services can find for you. So don't think that you're just thrown on the junk heap and you can't do anything anymore. There's always something there, and it is a hard part of it, getting back to work, but it's definitely rewarding when you get back. So.
Thank you. And unfortunately, we've run out of time. So thank you for everybody else who sent questions through. But most importantly, thank you to yourself, Joanne, and Dan, who are WorkSafe Health and Safety Month ambassadors this year. Really do appreciate the fact that you have shared such a personal story. And I think personally, it has impacted me listening to you tell it. So thank you very much for sharing that. So Joanne, thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob.
And Dan, thank you very much as well.
Thanks, Rob.
Well, I think in listening to that, we've well and truly answered the question why WorkSafe exists. Like Dan and Joanne, we don't want to see anybody else go through what they've been through. And where workers are injured, we want to make sure that we are supporting them to return to work, health, and life. Well, that's it for this session. Please feel free to contact us on our advisory line or emergency line. And if you do need to have any more information, you can also contact us. So on behalf of Joe, Dan, myself, and WorkSafe, thanks for tuning in today.